Why, yes, Your Honor, I did see Promising Young Woman because Bo Burnham was in it. And what? Content warning. This film deals with the topics of sexual assault, suicide, and lots of violence and misogyny otherwise. Also, from now on, I'm going to assume that if you're watching this video, you've seen the movie. So, spoilers. If I may draw the jury's attention to Exhibit A. Promising Young Woman follows Cassandra Thomas, aka Cassie, whose life has been permanently affected by the sexual assault and subsequent death of her best friend,
gal pals,
Nina Fisher. For years now, Cassie has been stuck in time, unable to pursue her goals due to her fixation on the attack that led to Nina's death. For reasons that remain somewhat murky throughout the entire film, she spends time pretending to get blackout drunk at bars so that men will attempt to rape her, and then she calls them out on their abuse. This is Act 1 Cassie in a nutshell. Trapped, angry, possibly a little ashamed. The film really captures what it feels like to stagnate in response to trauma. Cassie knows that her lack of forward momentum hurts her, and that her dwelling on the past prohibits her from pursuing what she really wants. There is a deep tension between who Cassie is and who she wants to be. This is shown pretty clearly at the end of Cassie's date with Ryan, at least in my interpretation of the scene.
Do you want to go up, have a drink, or...?
Sure, why not?
Cassie vocalizes a desire for intimacy, but she can't quite process that desire in a way that is consistent with her aversion for masculine sexuality. She says yes, but in a way that clearly communicates no. I personally read Cassie as thinking that Ryan is a bit gross. I mean, his first scene in the movie is marked by drinking someone else's spit. He's a heterosexual, mask-presenting cisgender man who, let's be honest, is a little too pushy in most of his scenes with her.
Look, if you're not into this, totally get it.
I'm not really looking to date anyone at the moment.
Right, yeah. Me neither. Would you be interested in a friendship, and I'm secretly pining for you the whole time?
He's the light gray iteration of the archetype that Cassie has been fighting for years now. But she wants him, and that tension is what keeps Cassie from moving on from Nina's death. How does she pursue the heteronormative life in a male-dominated field if that snapshot includes a kind of person she despises? And that, Your Honor, the state of wanting something that you also hate, is what I would call a mental illness. This is pretty well grounded in text. Cassie is traumatized. This is a mental condition that impairs brain functioning, changes the chemical responses of the brain to external stimuli. Given all this, it's pretty clear that we are supposed to doubt the purity of Cassie's mission. She is not in her right mind, and everyone keeps telling her that whatever it is she's up to can't be right. She experiences moments where she genuinely seems to lose track of herself. The implication that Cassie's work harms her is made pretty explicit in a scene that she shares with Mrs. Fisher, Nina's mother.
I just wanted to see you.
You need to stop this. It isn't good for any of us. It's no good for Nina. It isn't good for you.
We're given pretty clear indication that we are to see Cassie's behavior as dysfunction. Cassie wants to move on from the trauma of losing her best friend, but has what seems to be a pathological need to rectify the situation. However, because Cassie is not delusional, she knows that there is no rectifying what was done to Nina, for reasons not the least of which being that Nina is dead. Without her being alive, none of Cassie's work has any substantive purpose. It does nothing but harm herself and other people. Nina's mother is harmed by Cassie's occupation. Cassie seems to not be able to continue her work without going to Mrs. Fisher for reassurance. We get the sense during this scene that Cassie has made similar visits to the Fisher household with fewer pleasantries.
Cassie, move on. Please. For all of us.
Because helping Nina get back on her feet is not possible, Cassie's world is on unsteady ground. You might be familiar with the feeling of having a sick family member take a turn for the worse, and realizing that there is nothing you can do to ensure that they will recover. I imagine that this is similar to what Cassie feels about Nina. A little voice in the back of her mind tells her that everything will be okay once Nina gets the closure she needs. But Nina doesn't need anything. There is nothing to do. So, Cassie impotently searches for what she imagines Nina might need by proxy, and that is an apology, or indeed any recognition of the fact that what was done to Nina was wrong. And that knowledge that Cassie is acting on a contradiction, causing harm where she is trying to do good, makes us question whether or not Cassie's actions throughout the film are correct. But does it, though? We're pretty much rooting for Cassie from the last line of the opening sequence.
I said, what are you doing?
Like, who is this mysterious, calculating, poised bisexual rape avenger? I want her to spit in my drink, too. But most importantly, her mission is righteous, right? Do we think Dean Walker is ever going to under-investigate a rape allegation ever again? What about all the men who attempted to rape her while she was too drunk to consent? Do we think that this event will have no effect on their relationships with women in the future? But most importantly, does Nina Fisher not deserve justice? Even if we take a strict consequentialist approach and assume that no good will come of avenging a dead person, the idea of justice has a practical purpose. Justice is precedent. If one person gets their rape victim's name carved into their chest, that victim's name becomes a vehicle for justice. In a very real and tangible sense, the dead live on. Let's interpret what Cassie says about Nina in Cassie's last scene of the film.
Suddenly she was something else. She was yours. It wasn't her name she heard when she was walking around. It was yours. Your name. All around her. All over her, all the time. And it just squeezed her out.
She says that Nina's vitality was drained from her until her death was all but a foregone conclusion by way of her name. Why does it matter that Alexander Monroe's name is spoken more often than Nina Fisher's? It's because Nina's name ought to have been used as a tool for action. People should have been talking for years about what a bunch of subhuman pieces of shit did to her. Police should have been asking who was at fault for Nina Fisher's rape. Prosecutors should have been using her name every single day for months or years until a trial came to an end. It doesn't matter in the slightest that Nina is dead and can no longer enjoy her rapist going to prison. A crime was committed, and Cassie can't understand why the rule of law is such a burden to adhere to in this case. What does it matter if the Fishers want to move on? Their desires do not take precedence here. It is Nina's personhood that is on the line. Her right to self-determination and her right to retaliate when a crime has been committed against her. I initially thought it was kind of strange that Al Monroe's defense attorney was unable to remember Nina Fisher's last name.
I remember her. Nina? Was that it? I'm sorry, I don't remember her full name, but... It was Nina, though, wasn't it?
But actually, it brings the law back into a discussion that has otherwise become somewhat abstracted. You know, for the most part, Cassie targets symbols of Al Monroe. Her attempts at justice are fungible and non-definitive. Nothing Cassie does is sure to last. But this is a reminder that rape is a crime that is supposed to be prosecuted, and it brings Cassie's mission back down to earth. Can we really say that there is no value to what Cassie is doing? A dehumanizing crime was done to her friend because she wasn't even considered fully sentient. But now, everything that Nina left behind gets to take the stand. That's not psychotic thinking or an allegory. It's a reified legal process. Indeed, every time Cassie calls out an abuser for being abusive, Nina's influence is tangible. Cassie is a fortified witness stand for Nina's speech. You know, if I have learned anything about mental illness over the past year, and I certainly haven't, it's that people yelling at you to get over your feelings isn't going to help you with anything. I feel very strongly that the people yelling at Cassie to move on with her life are something of a less extreme mirror image of the people who say that Nina shouldn't have been drinking the night she was raped. Society failed Cassie in similar ways to how it failed Nina. As I said, Cassie is not delusional. She merely holds different values to other people. Because Cassie has set herself to the Herculean task of achieving justice, she has put other goals to the side. Yes, she is holding herself back from getting things that she really wants. And no, I don't think that makes her the perfect image of mental health. But telling her that she ought to hold one goal above another is kind of to erase her agency as well. To devalue the labor it takes for her to live her authentic self. Cassie is not a confused little girl who needs to have her hand held through a bout of heartbroken hysteria. She is a disciplined warrior for a cause that she believes is worth sacrificing for. Listen, I am sometimes mistaken for a woman. I don't know how. I don't really get it. That's their problem, but here we are. And I can tell you that those folks deal with an aggravating trend of people telling them that they ought to value things that they don't. And it never seems to occur to those people that contradictory desires can exist. And that desires that don't lead to traditional happiness and tranquility aren't invalid as life choices. I don't think that Cassie fixating on her desire to bring Nina justice is wrong, and I think the film agrees with me. The linchpin of this thought is, for me, the relationship she forms with Ryan. Ryan is essentially Cassie's killer, or at least a toxic force in her life that guides her off the path towards self-betterment. I present for your examination a discussion that was left out of the film but is in the official Promising Young Woman screenplay. In it, Cassie is speaking with her mother about the supposedly positive effect Ryan is having on Cassie's mental health.
Why didn't you ever talk about Nina's death? Because you were so angry, Cassie. We couldn't come near you. You have no idea what it's like, your anger. Of course I'm angry. But it's taken over everything. And whatever you do at night, you don't need to tell me what it is, but it seemed to work for a while. And then... So, if this boy is making you feel good, then... Oh God, Cassie. I just want you to be happy. I want you to feel better. Mama, nothing makes me feel better.
As you can plainly see from the evidence, Your Honor, Cassie's everyday functioning improved after her gay life coaching. You might actually say that this was a therapeutic exercise that helped Cassie process her emotions about Nina's death. And while the danger of the situation makes it difficult to say that this is the unambiguous move, it's clear to me that this is emotional work Cassie needed to do. Moving on is never enough. You need to confront the source of your trauma. Ryan might represent a fantasy of a future that Cassie wants, but that doesn't mean it's a future that can reliably bring her happiness. People don't always find happiness in the realization of their fantasies, because our fantasies often serve people we wish we were. I might wish that I had a legion of demons to obey my every command, but I also know that that would be a really big responsibility that wouldn't make me happy, no matter how many human livers they could bring me. Ryan might be really funny and nice and cute, but he's also really pushy. He doesn't leave her alone when she's made her feelings about him clear. He literally doesn't take no for an answer when Cassie says she isn't looking to date and tries to find loopholes in her speech to make her feel bad about rejecting him. He kisses her without consent, despite explicitly acknowledging that she doesn't want physical intimacy. He kind of slut-shames her for leaving the bar with another guy, even though, by his own admission, they aren't dating and certainly aren't monogamous. I'm not saying he's the scum of the earth or anything, but he's evidently not the kind of person that Cassie needs in her life right now. Her life kind of revolves around consent and treating violations of consent not just with contempt, but with outright derision. She makes its violators feel worthless. And when they protest, she makes them feel the way she does when she is made to feel worthless. Cassie might be attracted to Ryan, and that's valid, but I think he's demonstrably not a good choice for her. And treating him like her lifeline to happiness is indicative of a normative preference, not an absolute fact. Again, what Cassie wants for herself is not necessarily in alignment with what she wants. And frankly, I think this is borne out in another aspect of Cassie's character. You see, I have a really hard time watching movies dominated ubiquitously by straight people. In fact, I find all heterosexuals in movies to be utterly obscene. And I won't stand for it any longer. So, in case you haven't picked up on this yet, I made the active choice to read Cassie as being a queer person who had some intense romantic feelings for Nina. And that's partially because media has trained me to think of all interpersonal relationships as inherently romantic or sexual, and it's not okay, and I'm so sorry about it. Also because Cassie was giving me some major lipstick lesbian vibes. No, I can't explain what I mean by that. But also because Cassie's description of Nina seemed a little not platonic to me.
She was fully formed from day one. Same face, same walk, and funny. Like a grown-up is funny, kind of shrewd. I was just in awe of her. I couldn't believe she wanted to be my friend. She didn't give a fuck what anyone else thought apart from me, because she was just Nina.
The queer experience is quintessentially about being told to want things that you do not want. Indeed, that there is a right life to want, and a very wrong life as well. You might still think that Cassie's way of coping with Nina's death is wrong. In fact, a little part of me is inclined to agree with you. Your Honor, I retract my previous statement and volunteer to be executed immediately. But I can't stop thinking about how wrong it feels to condemn Cassie's choice to choose justice for Nina over a man. Ryan's complicity in the crime against Nina, both at the time and in the many years subsequent to it, is what triggered Cassie's decision to put her life in jeopardy. So what? Was the right decision for Cassie to forgive Ryan and move on? I don't know if you guys noticed this, but Ryan didn't even apologize. He jumped straight to demanding forgiveness. And when he didn't get it, he called Cassie a fucking failure. Can we really call this a tragic end if Cassie makes the right decision for herself? For attempting to give a rapist a fraction of what he deserves for ending a person's life. To endow her life with purpose that is perhaps greater than her own personal happiness. You can say that the justice system requires the accused to get their day in court, but no one took the responsibility to bring the accused to court. And the justice system isn't supposed to be an opt-out kind of arrangement. I still think that Cassie needs to live her life in a way that feels most authentic to her, even if it shortens it and doles out fewer pleasures than a more traditional life would. I just don't think it's for me to choose how one deals with a world that, frankly, does everything it can to make you feel like your decisions aren't important. Decisions about who and how you fuck. Decisions about who and how you love. Decisions about how you ought to feel and when you ought to feel something else. If Cassie's decision is wrong in a Hollywood 3-act structure sort of way, we're saying that, at its very essence, The choice and values that she put above all else weren't important. That they weren't the correct way to operate in a world that takes decisions away from you. And that's why Cassie gets her final jab at the end. Cassie was right. She made a balanced and carefully calculated judgment and was willing to throw the weight of her entire life behind it. And I think maybe that's all a good judgment can be. The defense rests. Future Shain, don't you just love picking up where I left off? Isn't this fun for you? Isn't this fucking fun for you? Dan Schneider, bring all my bitches back. I feel like when I was singing it in my head, I knew the words, but now I'm not so sure.